Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about A Dance with the Dragons, which is book 5 in A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's also the most recent novel, though it came out like 10 years ago, so I guess it's not that recent. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. If you want to see my videos on the first 4 books, then the link is right above. I know it's been like 6 months since I talked about book 4, but I've been busy with like finishing high school and stuff. Finally done with that, so that's cool. So, let's start off by talking about Jon Snow and everything else that's been going on at the Wall. So Stannis is there because Melisandre said that he is like the chosen one or whatever, and he's supposed to fight the others. And he basically helped stop this invasion of wildlings because they tried to take over the wall, but he pretty much stopped them in book 3. And he executes Mance Rayder. Well, we think he does. Mance isn't really dead. Um, Jon Snow had him like swapped out for another guy, so Jon Snow could help him save Arya. But we'll get to that later. But Stannis executes Mance because Stannis is like bend the knee, and Mance is like, I am a wildling. We bend to nobody. So he kills the fake Mance, and he pretty much just leaves at this point because he wants to get more support for the throne. So Stannis and Davos and everybody else, they pretty much just leave the wall, leaving Jon Snow to fend for the wildlings and the brothers. Jon himself has been the new Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. They elected him at the end of Book 3. So basically, he's trying to fight the others. He's preparing to fight the others with the wildlings and everything. And the others, they haven't built up since book 1. We still really haven't got a huge thing with them yet. We don't know much about them. They're basically like, they're basically these ice creatures who control the dead. So, similar to the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, but I feel like the others are a bit more intelligent and a little bit more human-like. Though of course they're not human. So Jon is trying to negotiate with the wildlings, including Tormund Giantsbane, because he's basically the new leader of the wildlings ever since fake Mance Rayder was killed. And he's like, okay, Tormund, I want you guys could stay at the wall, but better help us defend it against these ice zombies. And it's like, it's all cool and stuff. But there was some conflict, between the Night's Watch, whose very purpose was to defend against the wildlings, and now they have the wildlings who are living with them. So it's basically like, what's the point of the Night's Watch now if we're not fighting the wildlings? Because a lot of people at the Night's Watch don't really take the others as a serious threat, which is a huge problem because they are a serious threat. And they're just like, man, I hate these wildlings, and tensions are rising, basically. Also, we get a point of view chapter from Melisandre, which I think is really cool because prior to this, we didn't really know much about her or her intentions. And in this chapter, we find out that one, she actually is an honest person. She pretty much told all of her intentions upright. And two, she actually has magic. She could actually see into the flames, and she actually does get visions. However, she's really bad at interpreting them. She interprets them wrong. So, like, she looks into the flames and sees Arya Stark fleeing on a horse, and she thinks that, the girl's Arya, that she's in trouble. And she uses, her and Jon agree to have the real Mance Rayder, who, like I said, had a fake out death. He is sent to Winterfell, which is, owned by Ramsay Bolton and Roose Bolton, to rescue Arya. They don't know that this isn't the real Arya yet. Um, but basically, even the girl she saw wasn't Arya. It wasn't the fake Arya. It was Alice Karstark, which is like the distant relatives of the Starks, the Karstarks. And she's fleeing the wall for some other plot that I really don't care about. um, but basically, Jon meets this girl, and he's like, okay, why don't you marry the wildling guy? That would be cool. You know, you can marry the wildling guy to try to create this bond between the rest of Westeros and the wildlings. You know, kind of like they do in the South, where they had the Lannisters marry the Baratheons. It's kind of like that. Jon also gets a letter from Ramsay Bolton, who lies and basically said he crushed Stannis' army, you know, at Winterfell. But it's a lie. He's basically trying to get leverage out of Jon. And he's like, I'll attack you unless you send me Mrs. Stannis, little baby Stannis, and all these other hostages, and also send Arya and Theon because those guys ran away. And Jon's like, what? Arya and Theon aren't here? Um, he assumes they escaped Winterfell. But of course we know this isn't the real Arya. Jon's like, okay, that's it. He is threatening my sister's life. I gotta save her. So who's with me, guys? We're gonna go and we're gonna save Winterfell. And everybody's like, dude, we're the Night's Watch. We're not supposed to interfere with this stuff. You know? And you're being a bad leader. So, we're just gonna stab you because we think you broke your vows. Because, the way they see it, they're his only family that matters. And he's still focused on Arya, fake Arya. So, yeah, they basically just stab him. And we don't know if he's dead or not, which sucks. Um, Let us know, George. But my theory is that Jon is going to basically possess Ghost from now on, because we see that happen in the prologue with that one guy who could roll into wolves, and he dies as a human, but he lives on as a wolf. So my theory, at least, is that Jon's gonna live on as Ghost because they've been spiritually linked. Same with Arya and Nymeria. Same with Bran and Samuel. I mean, I'm sure that would have happened with Sansa if, Lady didn't die. Rest in peace, Lady. You were a real one. But yeah, that's what I think's gonna happen to Jon. So let's just move on to a character I don't like, Bran. If you've been following these videos, you know I don't like Bran. So let's just get him out of the way now, so I could focus the rest of this video on characters I actually do like. So basically, Bran's been traveling with Jojen and Mira Reed, no relation, by the way, and Hodel, and they come across the Children of the Forest, which are basically the species of Westeros natives who are here way before the humans, and they remember the White Walkers, and they remember everything, and they're like, I think it's really cool because we get to see their culture, the way they act. It's different from humans, but they have their own sort of thing going on, and they're basically like, okay, Bran, you gotta meet the last Green Seal, because Bran's a Green Seal, so is Jojen, and he's basically like this man who turned into a tree. He's basically like stuck to a tree now, which makes me wonder, like, how does he piss and shit and stuff? Where does it go? Does it just pile on top of each other? I need these answers, George R. R. Martin. Where does his shit go? But basically, he helps Bran learn how to green see. So Bran could go into the past and see stuff, and he could see Ned Stark, but like decades ago. And basically, he's like, Ned, Dad, Daddy, and Ned's like, who said that? Who said that? So I think Bran could interact with the past, but not to a certain extent. I don't know if he could change the future in any huge way. I don't think time travel's the way the series is going to end up, at least not in a major way. So maybe it's just going to be Bran looking into the past to help people. Maybe that's what's going to happen in book 6 and 7. Hopefully he actually helps people, unlike what he did in the show, where he's just sitting around like a stoned asshole, not saying anything. So, so I think he's going to look into the past and actually use the past information to help people, potentially defeat the others. And, that would make him worthy to be a king, because he actually helped the main storyline. While in the show, he just sat around and did nothing. Anyway, that's my rant. Um, Basically, I think Bran is going to be more useful in the books, but I'm still not a fan of him. Basically, because he's just a 7-year-old. He's just not as interesting as the other protagonists in this long, long, long book. Now, speaking of interesting protagonists, let's move on to Tyrion. Now, he's always been one of my favorite characters, but I feel like in this book, his plot lines kind of drag a bit. Like, they're still very interesting, but I feel like a lot of it's trying to pad out because Daenerys is doing her thing in Marine, and we can't really have Tyrion meet yet. So he kind of gets sidetracked a lot, which I feel like is this George's way of making sure they don't meet each other yet. So basically, Tyrion, he just killed his dad and his girlfriend, and he was helped escape by Varys and Jaime. So he's basically on this boat to Pentos, and he's being sheltered by Illyrio. And he's having like such a rough time, because like I said, he has a lot of issues. He's basically a low functioning alcoholic now. He's very bitter, depressed, just, not in the best shape. So, yeah, Tyrion is trying to meet Daenerys, and in his travels, he meets Aegon Targaryen and Jon Connington, which is very interesting characters. And he learns that Aegon's not dead, and Jon Connington is going to help him be the king of Westeros once they meet Daenerys. But he's like, Aegon, no, you should invade Westeros right now, because Daenerys has had too many filler arcs, and she doesn't, I feel like it'd just be easier if you guys invade Westeros, go there now and kill my sweet sister. And that's what they do. But I'll get back to them later. And we're focusing on Tyrion now. So, Tyrion is kidnapped by Jorah Mormont. You remember the creepy pedophile guy who sold out Daenerys for some information and stuff? And he's like, I'm going to deliver you to Daenerys so you'd like me again. I could be your creepy dad husband. It's weird. But before he's able to do that, they are kidnapped. And they're sold to youngest slave traders, where they meet this girl named Penny, who is also a dwarf like Tyrion. But it's very interesting because they both have very different perspectives on being a dwarf. Like, Tyrion hates being mocked, and he hates, like, when people mock him for being a dwarf. But Penny kind of embraces it in a way, and it's a way for her to survive. Because he likes putting on shows for people. Because he feels like this is the happiest she'd ever get. But she's also very sad because she was one of the dwarves from season 3, book 3, where she danced for Joffrey, and her brother was killed because somebody thought her brother was Tyrion, because her brother was also a dwarf. So she's mad at Tyrion for that, but she later comes around and forgives him, and they're kind of like friends, which I like. And eventually, the three of them are able to escape from the Yunkins, or the Yonkers, or whatever they're called, and they join the Second Sons, which is this group of assassins, and they're going to secure their support for Daenerys. So Tyrion's going to meet Daenerys in the next book, hopefully, if it ever comes out. So let's talk about Arya Stark, probably my favorite character in the series. Maybe out of the whole Brienne, I'm not exactly sure at this point, they keep on changing. And she only has 2 chapters in this book, but they're very significant, and a lot of stuff happens in them. So, I guess it's kind of the anti-Tyrion. So, basically, she's in Bravos, she's still training to be an assassin with the Faceless Men, and at the end of the last book, they made her blind, so she can't see anything. However, her hearing went up, like Daredevil, from the Marvel. And she could also see through her direwolf Nymeria and cats. Now, I know the direwolves because she's a Stark, but I'm not exactly sure why she could see through cats. Maybe it's because her mom's name was Cat, or maybe the Stark bloodline isn't exclusive to turning into wolves. Maybe you could turn into any animal. That's not really clear at this point. So basically, she's being an assassin, being a spy and stuff, and whole sight is restored after a while because she gets assigned to play another character and kill somebody else. And he is this merchant who very corrupt, and sees, yes, he's like, they're like, okay, you gotta kill him. So she does, and it's pretty brutal. But after she does it, they're like, okay, now kill somebody else. And I'm not exactly sure why I love these chapters so much. Maybe it's because of how mysterious the Faceless Men are. I really want to know more about them in the next book, but at the same time, I kind of like having them a bit mysterious. You know? If you've seen my Twin Peaks videos, you know I kind of like how not all of these questions are answered, and some of them never will. But at the very least, I'd like to know what the Faceless Men want. What's their end goal? Because I feel like in the TV show of Game of Thrones, we never really saw that. So hopefully, we at least know that. So let's move on now to Daenerys, who I'm glad to say has the most amount of chapters since Book 1. Which is good, because I feel like she was in Book 2 and 3, but she wasn't really given that much of a focus as much. And of course she wasn't in Book 4, because it takes place the same time as this one. So anyway, Dany has conquered Meereen, and she's like, nope, slavery, gotta go. But she's kind of struggling to have everything be happy and peaceful, because different sides of the city are kind of at war. Those are the Sons of the Harpy, those are the Yunkai, and those are the Mionese resistance group. So she's trying to keep them all at peace and stop them from killing each other. Meanwhile, her dragons are kind of causing problems, you know, and she has to lock them up. Because if she doesn't, they're gonna start lighting people on fire or eating people, and all this other crazy stuff. So she's like, sorry guys, go to the dungeons. And Drogon, he escapes, and he fucks off somewhere. I don't really know where he goes, but he comes back later. And Dany's also in love with Dario and Naharis, mainly I think because he reminds her of Khal Drogo. She really likes I don't know. She really likes tribal men, kind of like real tough tribal men. I don't know how to explain it, but even though she's in love with him, she has to marry his dolls or Lork because he's this nobleman from Meereen. Because she wants to be aligned with the Meereenese people, like the Sons of the Harpy and stuff. So if you remember back in Book 3, Dany kind of closed the fighting pits because, you know, she doesn't like people fighting. But his doll's like, no, 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 you gotta reopen the fighting pits. It's the Meereen tradition for us to chop each other's heads off. So she's like, okay, yeah, fine, who cares? Fighting pits! Even though she really doesn't enjoy it herself. She kind of does it for the people. And, you know, people fighting, crazy stuff's happening, and boom, Drogon appears. He liked the noise, and he kind of goes crazy, starts killing people, starts burning people alive, a lot of crazy shit. And Dany climbs onto Drogon, and she's like, calm down, Drogon, and he flies away with her, and fucks off to somewhere. And that somewhere turns out to be the Dothraki Sea. And I like how they kind of kept us waiting about 300 pages to find out where she went, because it creates tension among both Barristan, the Motels, everybody in Meereen, but we'll get back to them later. Because Dany is in the Dothraki Sea, and she lands on this island controlled by the Dothraki people, and she's found by this Dothraki horde led by Khal Jacko. I guess the Dothraki are really creative with their names. But anyway, I like this final chapter because she has visions of her past, and it kind of shows how insecure she is. She's very confident but insecure at the same time. She still has thoughts about her evil brother, her dead husband, um, Jorah Mormont who betrayed her. She's second guessing herself, and that makes her a very complex character, as with everybody else in this series, except for Bran. Um, so yeah, I don't really know where this plotline in particular is going. I feel like we've kind of sidetracked a bit because I thought that Dany was going to go to Westeros, but maybe the Dothraki are going to help her go to Westeros, or they'll just chop her head off. We honestly don't know at this point. George likes to throw us some curveballs, so we'll find out in book 6 if it ever comes out. Hopefully, it comes out. I'm not keeping my hopes up, but hopefully. Let's move on to the most meh character of Song of Ice and Fire, Quentin Motel. Now, I don't really hate him. There's nothing I don't hate about him, but there's nothing I really like about him either. He's just kind of there. Um, so Quentin, he's a Motel. He is the son of the Prince of Dorne. He's related to Arianne, and he's also related to good old Pedro Pascal. And he arrives in Marine after being sent to there at the beginning of A Feast for Crows, and he wants to marry Daenerys. He doesn't really love her, like he wants to love her, but obviously they didn't really meet each other yet, so how could he love her? But anyway, he wants to make an alliance with the Targaryens and the Motels, because the Motels have beef with the Lannisters ever since they let Pedro Pascal die in Book 3. So, after arriving in Marine, he tries to get with Dany, but she's just like, nah, I'm gonna friend zone you. And he's like, damn, that kind of sucks. But he he stays there anyway, and after Dany fucks off to who knows where, Dothraki see, but they don't know that. He tries to be like Dany and calm down one of the dragons. But this ends as well as you expect it would. He gets boomed and he dies. Both dragons fly away. And he doesn't have a quick death. He has like a low, slow, drawn out death. Like, I think it took 3 days for him to die. So, makes me question, what's the point of his character then? What? Why was he here if he just dies without really accomplishing much? I guess that would make the Motels angry. Will they try to blame Daenerys? Um, that's possibly a way they could go with this plotline. There's also Victorian Greyjoy, who is so nasty. He's probably the nastiest POV character. Like, he's very involved in his religion, which includes sacrificing a bunch of prostitutes. He kills them on his ship. Very brutal man. I don't know. I feel like he just likes killing people. And he wants to Daenerys himself. He wants to marry Daenerys himself. And he wants to use all dragons to overthrow Jon Greyjoy, who, according to all accounts, is even nastier than Victorian. So, I don't really love this plotline. Like, I could take it or leave it. It's just one of those smaller ones I don't really care about that much. He's just kind of there for me. I'm more interested in Asha and Theon when it comes to the Greyjoys. So out of all the new POV characters introduced in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, my favorite is either Asha or Barristan, but we're going to talk about Barristan right now. So, Barristan, of course, is Dany's main knight. He used to work for the Lannisters, but he was just quit because he hates Joffrey. And now he's like working for Daenerys, and he's a very loyal man. We get to see his through his mind, we get to see about his past and his regrets, and how things were a lot better for him back then, but now it's just kind of like he's old and self-reflecting, which is kind of cool. But in the plotline itself, he finds out that his doll tried to poison Daenerys, so he removes him from power, but that means that the Sons of Harpy start killing people again. And he also has to prepare for battle with all the armies outside of Meereen. So meanwhile, in the north, after killing Catelyn and Robb, the Boltons allied with the Freys to pretty much just take over the North, and now they're the new kings of the North. And Stannis is starting to rise up against them. He's starting to fight off the Ironborn who invaded the North, and he's pledging to recapture Winterfell and be the new king of the North. And he captures Asha Greyjoy, from Book 4, and she's also Theon's sister, very interesting character. And he marches her and the rest of them down to Winterfell to attack the Boltons. But there's a lot of heavy snowstorms, so they get stuck. Let's move on to Davos Seawolf, who, in my opinion, is a very underrated character and very underused in the TV show. So, he's sent by Stannis to go to Lord Wyman Manderley, and Manderley pretends to execute Davos. Davos gets a fake-out death to get on the Lannisters' good side, but secretly he's like, okay, Davos, my man, me and the other northern guys are gonna pretend to be loyal to the Lannisters and the Boltons, but we're still pissed off about Robb Stark dying, so we're not really with them. We're just pretending to be with them. And also, Rickon Stark, remember Rickon Stark? Neither do I, but he's hiding out on the remote island of Skagus. And Manderley's like, okay, I'll support Stannis if you could find Rickon and unite the Stark supporters around him and all the other Starks. So he's like, if you find Rickon, we got Stannis' back. Now let's move on to my favorite character in this book, Book 5's MVP, Theon Greyjoy. The amount of development this guy gets is insane. So, he starts off being Ramsay's prisoner, who he's just been physically mutilated. It's disgusting. His name is Reek now. And Stannis cuts off his fingers and toes and dick and all this other important body parts. And Theon is basically like lost his entire identity. He thinks he's Reek, or he's scared to not think he's Reek because he's worried Ramsay will cut off another finger. And yeah, he thinks he's Reek. He likes to rhyme things with other things. Jane and Pain, Reek and Sneak. A bunch of stuff. Arya and... Nothing rhymes with Arya, when you think about it. But anyway, Ramsay is gonna marry Arya Stark. But Ramsay doesn't know that this isn't Arya Stark, like I've mentioned before. This is Jane Poole, who's a friend of Sansa. And she's forced to impersonate Arya and pretend to marry him, or pretend to be Arya. And Theon is the only one who realizes, wait a minute, guys, this isn't Arya, because I know Arya, and she's not her. Unfortunately for Jane Poole, Ramsay is very sadistic, as we've seen him with Theon, and he is just pretty much rapes her, sexually harasses her. It's really terrible stuff. Kinda uncomfortable for me to read sometimes. I know George likes to make people uncomfortable. I feel like he succeeded in that chapter. Maybe he went a little too far, but maybe I'm just oversensitive. Who cares? But Mance Rayder, remember when Jon Snow sent Mance Rayder to the north? Well, he arrives and he's like, Theon, hey, you gotta help me free Arya. And Theon's like, oh no, that's not Arya. That's Jane Poole. And eventually, Theon and Jane and Ramsay are on this expedition or something, and they are able to escape. They leap from the castle wall and fall into the snow. I'm glad they survived. It was a very intense scene. I'd say my favorite chapter in the book because just the amount of intensity and how much you root for Theon. Even after all the bad things he's done in book 2, he kind of has a little redemption arc in book 5 when he saves Jane Poole. So, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of redeemed himself. Unfortunately, they're captured by Stannis' forces, and that's when Theon meets Asha Greyjoy. And she's like, wait, who are you? And he's like, I'm Theon, but disgusting now. And she's like, damn, you really let yourself go. So we're going to see how that ties up in book 6. Possibly Theon might give Stannis some insider information that might help them defeat the Boltons. That's what I'm thinking at least, because Theon witnessed a lot of the Boltons goings-ons, you know? So that's at least what I think, but like I said, these are probably my favorite chapters from book 5. I'd say my favorite chapters, yeah, they're my favorite ones of book 5. Let's move on to Jaime Lannister, who doesn't have as much prominence in this book as he did in book 4, but he has a very interesting chapter. So it starts off with him negotiating the surrender of Robb Stark's last few remaining allies. So he officially ends the war between the Starks and the Lannisters, and he comes back home to King's Landing, where Brienne of Tarth is there to meet him. And she's like, Sansa Stark is in trouble. You gotta help me find her. Though, save her. Though, of course, we know that, she's lying, you know, because obviously Sansa is with Littlefinger in the Vale. And, what's really happening is she has to lure him over to Lady Stoneheart so Lady Stoneheart could kill him. But this seems a little suspicious because Brienne of Tarth vouched for Jaime, so I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen in the next book. I think what's going to happen is Brienne is leading him there under false pretenses to try to defeat Lady Stoneheart, or maybe Lady Stoneheart will kill them. Who knows? Personally, what I want to happen is I want Jaime to die saving Brienne of Tarth. I want him to die facing Lady Stoneheart, but he's able to save Brienne in the process. That would be a fitting end to Jaime's character, if you ask me, because he finally would have regained his honor, you know? And let her save the rest of the Starks. I don't know, that just sounds like a nice way to wrap up his character arc, and him and Brienne's relationship. Hopefully they don't go the route of the show, and just have him go back to his sister, because that was terrible. I did not like that. Let's move on to Jon Connington, a character we've never really met before this book, and was not in a TV show. So, he was in a book earlier with Tyrion, and he was with young Griff, aka Aegon Targaryen, and if you remember me saying earlier, they were gonna go meet Daenerys, but Tyrion was like, no, you guys attack Westeros up front. So, they listened, and Aegon and all of his armies captured several castles in the Stormlands, and they're building up their armies. And Jon Connington himself, he is really ill because he has grayscale, which is a disease, and he's probably going to die soon, but he wants to go with Aegon, but Aegon's like, nah, I'll do it myself. It's okay. Thanks, old sick man. So, meanwhile, Doran Martell sends 3 of his nieces to King's Landing to infiltrate the Faith and the government to work in Doran's best interests. Now, this chapter is told from the perspective of Arya Hota, who doesn't really do much to impact the story's plot. So I think would have been more interested to hear from like the perspective of one of the Dornish nieces. But that's just my opinion. I feel like Arya Hota is not a interesting character. He feels more like a narrator. Like he doesn't really have an arc in this like the other POV characters do. Like if it were me, I would have had it want to be one of the nieces, be the POV character. So let's talk about Sergey Lannister, who only has 2 chapters in this, but I feel like they're very interesting chapters. So if you remember, at the end of Book 4, she was arrested by the Faith on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and fornication and incest and stuff. And so she could be released from prison. She's like, okay, I did this and this and this, but I did not kill my husband, and I did not fuck my brother, and my kids are not incest babies. And they're like, okay, we accept your first few crimes, so you could release, but also you have to walk naked down the entire city. And she's like, oh, well that kind of sucks. She walks naked down the whole city, and it's a very dramatic chapter. I feel like this is one of the few chapters where you actually get to side with Cersei. You actually get to feel her pain a bit. They describe how humiliating it is for her, and how everybody's just taunting her and really insulting her because, well, she's a mother, she had 3 kids, so obviously her body has stretch marks and stuff, and it just, the words these guys are saying to her as she's walking down is very, very mean-spirited, you know? I feel like even an evil woman like her doesn't deserve that, but in a way, I think it humbled her and made her a little bit more, driven, a little bit more humbled. And she finishes that walk of shame. Through it, she's thinking of her brother, she's thinking of Tyrion, she's thinking of her husband, she's thinking of all these people she feels has let her down throughout her life. And it's kind of a sad chapter because you realize Cersei really doesn't have anybody left. She doesn't really have anybody left to cling to. But after she finishes her walk of shame, she meets Sir Robert Strong, a very interesting name. He's this 8 foot tall man filled with armor, and he can't speak until he kills all of Cersei's enemies. And she's like, it's okay. He can help you during your trial by combat. And she's like, ooh, yes, maniacal laugh, maniacal laugh. So, I don't know. In a way, I feel like Cersei's learned nothing. But we don't know, you know? That was only just the beginning. So all that leaves us left with is the epilogue, which is actually told from the perspective of Kevin Lannister, which is interesting because I believe this is the only time we see a prologue or an epilogue told from the perspective of a character we already know pretty well. You know, Kevin's been in all the other books, so we kind of know who he is. And at this point in the story, he's pretty much taken over the government because Cersei's trial and everything, and he's pretty much like the de facto leader. And, you know, because Tywin's still a little kid, and he's trying to undo all the mess that Cersei made, and, you know, looks like he's actually on the right track. He's, doing things pretty well. He meets with Cersei, talks to her. She seems a lot more humbled, a bit quiet, which is kind of sad to him. And still no word on where Jaime went. No word on where Tyrion went. It's, you know, it's what it is. But for the most part, it seems like the kingdom's doing pretty well. And then, bam, he gets stabbed by Varys. He kills him. He kills Maester Pycelle. Turns out Varys is secretly allied with the Targaryens this entire time. Ooh. And he has been plotting for years for the Lannisters to basically destroy themselves with their own incompetence and greed, so that Aegon Targaryen could take the throne, the rightful leader. And he tells Kevin this because, well, Kevin's dying anyway, so I guess he might as well know. And Varys is like, okay, little children, finish them off. And the little kids come out and start stabbing him to death, finishing him off. Yeah, I don't know where these kids' parents are, but, who knows? Who knows where those kids' parents are? These are the answers I need in Book 6, George. Where are the child spy's parents? So after 1 month, 2 months, and 20 days, I have finally finished A Song of Ice and Fire, or what exists of it at the moment. It's 4,244 pages long, and I definitely do not regret reading it. It's one of the most comprehensive, uh, just richly world-built, character-driven pieces I've ever read. And that definitely stands for Book 5 as well. I think the character development, the world building is just as strong as ever. Though I feel like this is probably my least favorite of the 5 books because I feel like not enough happens in it. A lot happens with characters, but not enough happens in the plot itself. It just seems like things are going from point A to point B. Um, like characters are trying to get from point A to point B, and I feel like point B is much more exciting, but rarely do we see point B. It's just that little scratch in the middle, which is what Book 5 is. And I know Book 5 was supposed to be combined with Book 4, but it was too long. I actually think Book 4 is a little bit better than Book 5 because it feels more focused and a lot more things happen in a lot less pages. That being said, I do enjoy Book 5 a lot, you know, it's still a fantastic book. I'm going to give it a B. If I had to rank all the books, I'd say 3, 1, 2, 4, 5. They're all just fantastic books, though. And hopefully George lives long enough to give us another one, because I have so many questions yet to be answered. Like, what's going to happen with Lady Stoneheart? Who's the rightful king? Is it Daenerys or is it Aegon? In Is the Lannisters, when's that coming to an end? What's Varys' true loyalties? Like, what's Tyrion gonna do when he meets Daenerys? What's gonna happen to Jon Snow? Is he gonna come back to life? Is he gonna turn into a ghost? Is he gonna come back as an other? Who knows? And we'll probably never know. But still, this ending, which wasn't even an ending, was more satisfying than Game of Thrones Season 8. At least now it could, end like The Sopranos did and just